Welcome to Rural Reboot. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, and today I'm joined by Joe Toscano. How you doing?
I'm good, man, and I gotta say, I really appreciate you have such a great radio voice. This is gonna be awesome.
Right, welcome. Yeah, so let's get started with who is Joe Toscano?
Joe Toscano, good question. For me, I come from Omaha, Nebraska, so that's a big reason why I'm out here doing some of this work. I grew up in, a small city. It wasn't like a small town. It's not rural like, Canyon City is, but, my mom is from a town of 3,000 people. I've been around it. I know what it's like. I think the biggest reason I'm involved in some of this stuff is because I grew up in Nebraska, and I saw when I was young, I had so much ambition to do all these things with the internet. The internet was so young and blooming and so many opportunities. But Omaha, Lincoln even, where I went to college, there were no opportunities. So a big reason why I'm doing this work is because when I grew my career, I had to leave the state. I had to get out. I had to leave my family and friends. I had to make all new connections. I had to, bootstrap it because all love to my parents. They had no idea what I was doing. They didn't want to help, support it because they thought I was crazy. They said, stay home, do it the right way, all these things,
Yeah.
It was hard. So, I worked my way up, and for people who are listening that don't know my background, I ended up as a consultant for Google, and I did design and code, and I really built my career at a young age. But I left because I had concerns with the way Silicon Valley is treating the world, and I felt that the best way to make change was to leave and to be an advocate, to educate people, to create better business models. And in doing that, I also went back home, because I felt like we need to increase the data literacy, the digital literacy in these rural communities, not only to create jobs, but just generally I believe it's the future. I believe that similar to electrification, which increased the health, the longevity of life, the level of education, all these things in these rural areas, I think technology work, modern digital work, digital literacy is that next wave of electrification. So
Yeah, definitely.
being from Omaha is my core, and that's what helped me understand and see that transition. I went from when I was working in Silicon Valley, I go home and teach, and I felt like a 4-hour, 5-hour flight was like going back 15 years in time.
Yeah,
So
I understand completely.
So the reality is, the reason I'm out here, the reason I'm involved in this reboot work is I fundamentally believe is one of the best ways to bring our nation back together, create good jobs, bring jobs that are currently offshore back into the United States, provide value to our communities, and do it in a way that also positively impacts those people's lives.
Yeah, and you're in a really unique place in terms of technology too. We both have kind of like a similar upbringing where we were in this semi-rural area growing up, and there's this grit, and there's this I will get this done because I know that I can put in the work to get it done, versus kind of like the tech bro area where it's like, you're going to go into this tech world because your dad was in the tech world and grandparent was in the tech world. Like there was this an integral part, and then rediscovering that in these rural areas where it still to this day hasn't really impacted it to a great effort, really.
No, and it's a different culture too. I was raised by parents who didn't go to college, who raised me on a postal salary. They're post office delivery people. Eventually they created their own business, but my early childhood and, teens, they were doing that. And I learned blue collar labor and work ethic. And when I got to the Valley, all due respect to the level of intelligence, there were some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. There's also a lot of people who are born with silver spoons in their mouth, and they don't understand what it's like to not have that support system or have to get up and do something that you don't really want to do because you just need to pay your bills. And you need to do things to get by in life. There's a lot of people out there who've had a cushy life for a long time, and that impacts the way you build technology, the way you think about impacts on cultures and things like that. If you sit in that little bubble of Silicon Valley, it's easy to be blind.
Yes.
And I saw a lot of blindness, and it's not that it's evil. It's not that it's intentional. It's just that's their world
Yeah,
purview.
it's a lack of awareness, honestly. Like people
Right.
may have the best intentions in the world, but if they're not aware of the people that they're impacting, then things can go in a very different direction than they intended it to.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I left, really, is I just think that technology, it feels so established when we look at Google, Facebook, all these companies. Oh, they've been here for 15 years, 20 years, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think it really is. I think it's still very young. We're still seeing the maturation process of the technology industry. And I felt that the best way to see it bloom better is to go out and educate more people so we can get more people involved. It's not just a silver spoon lifestyle. It's, we can get these blue collar workers involved. We can have kids creating technologies that represent their communities, and ultimately have more creativity in the industry. Because right now I just think it's gridlock. There's a lot of power struggle, a lot of monopoly dominance that needs to be broken up. And I think the best way to do that is through consumer education and innovation.
Yeah. So going into that side of things a little more, what was that process like for you? What was the discovery period for you of going and being a consultant for Google and being like, okay, I see what's happening here. But what was the turning point for you to where you were like, okay, I need to get involved and make a difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. And everyone kind of wants like this one point. I don't know that there's like one moment where I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. It was more an accumulation over time of events. It was, in college, I was a research scientist. I did data science for a couple years. As a sophomore and junior, I was doing graduate level where I was getting paid to do data science. We had to go through a review board. We had all these different standards we had to cut through. That's why academia is so slow. There is a lot of regulation around it. And you have to make sure you're not psychologically harming people in your studies or experiments, right? You can't turn them into just dummy test subjects.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about proper research. And when I got to the Valley, I started to see practices that I felt would be illegal if they were to actually go through proper regulation or certain boards, And I tried to make a change. I did. I tried to do it while I was out there. And what I realized was that this change, if I really wanted to make it from the inside, would take me probably my entire career. Because you're an insider, you have so many factors that you have as levers. But ultimately, as a consultant at Google, I was an external person. I wasn't a Google employee. So that makes it harder to make change, for one. For two, it's, at least at Google, it's similar around Facebook, Amazon, all these, but like at the time you're talking about $100 billion company. When a company's making that much money, they're paid. They're fat cats. They have no incentive to go change.
Yeah.
And I felt that the best way to go make change was to go educate consumers, because we have these, if you will, like Titanic ships that, if you think about that metaphor, right, it's trying to steer a ship that's that big. Even if you crank that wheel, it's going to take a long time to turn, right? So what we needed, and what I felt we needed, was a wave of consumer demand from the outside to help accelerate that turn, and that's a lot of my work that came from that. And that what led to me, like I said, was seeing how some of the data science is done, seeing their operations, seeing the silos is built. I just saw a lot of parallels to the financial industry in the early mid 2000s and the way that crashed. I saw all that stuff, very big parallels. And I said, I need to get out. We need to educate people. We need to make change, because generally I do believe technology has positively impacted the world, but there are a handful of fundamental flaws that are now cascading across our societies and creating mass scale, large detrimental problems,
It's like the process of laying a brick wall. If there's a small speck in that brick wall, it can make gigantic implications further up in the wall than you even think. And that's kind of where we are. And I think it really went to head over the last 2 years, where we kind of like everyone's inside, everyone's connection to everyone else was that technology. You are a huge data privacy advocate. What was that process like for you in terms of educating people around data privacy, because it's still a very new idea of like something outside, intangible to us really, but it is super, it's basically a digital version of ourselves that these companies have.
Yeah. And not just ourselves, but our whole community, our world really. Not to get too deep into it, but I'm sure you've probably heard of the metaverse stuff. Facebook just changed their name to Meta, whatever. What that really is, what they're saying but no one's hearing, is they have so much data that they've effectively, or they will very soon, recreate our world in digital form.
Yeah, and intentionally going to try to do that.
Yeah. So who owns property in the digital world? Who runs the money in the digital world? Why can't Facebook have its own world that people live in? Will they? We don't know. Will some other company do it? We don't know. I do think you're going to have a large chunk of the world that, from a hedonistic perspective, enjoys the perfectionism, the control, the anything I want is my reality, you know? But then there's going to be another side that likes technology more for the utilitarian aspects.
Yeah.
And so I actually forget the original question here. But I think that we're going to head into a world that is very interesting in terms of, data privacy is what we're talking about. Yeah. It's hard for people to understand that now, but that's, I think, because of the way that the media portrays it. And you have to consider that this really opened up to the public in like 2013. Edward Snowden came out, leaked the NSA documents, made it people aware of surveillance. That was maybe just like the eggshell just kind of nicked, you know. A lot of people hated it. A lot of people loved it. But then over the last almost decade now, because that was 2013, you just had it happen, repeat over and over. All these like, wow, we didn't know that was happening. This is happening. And it's actually what you're seeing. I think we're seeing the truth calcify. We're seeing that what Edward Snowden said was true. Maybe he didn't do it the most appropriate way. Maybe there's better ways to do it. But what he was saying is true. Yeah. Because we also saw it come out, Facebook surveillance, Google surveillance, all these other companies. And people struggle to understand that impact and what surveillance can cause and problems. And I think mostly that's partly because of like a lack of digital and data literacy. That's a big part of it. But part of it also is just like these concepts are so new, it's hard to translate. And so, the media doesn't know how to cover them. You know, when I first started this, I was the dude that everyone said you should wear, a tinfoil hat and go hide in your parents' basement. All the reporters I talked to, I had at one point I had Diane Sawyer call me, and like they didn't know how to report it. It's not because they're dumb; it's because it's a new concept. And in order for them to make proper journalism, they have to make the language pretty simple. Actually, like you have an audience that globally, at least or nationally, at least in the U.S., the average reading level is like around an 8 to 9 grade reading level. Some of these concepts are really hard to explain at that level, And so I had all these journalists that just couldn't understand for a few years, and they wouldn't bite on any stories that I created. Now they're all reaching out to me, because they're like, oh, this is crazy. But the problem is now we're just scraping the surface, and the most tangible concept they report on is like, oh, your data leads to different ad targeting. And while it is a good step in the right direction, I'm happy that we're talking about it. It's not talking about the real dangers of a lack of data privacy and protection. It's just scratching the surface of what that means. But like a simple example that I can, talk about right now is think about, let's just say TikTok. Yeah. I have a lot of people who they're like, well, it's just a platform for kids to go make funny videos. But like, okay, that platform is taking their location all the time. It's taking all this other data from them, their interests, their, habits, really.
Yeah, we've seen that they have scanned people's faces and adjusted the look that they have when using the app.
Yeah, and that's changing the way kids perceive themselves, self-confidence. It's all literally an alternate reality, right? But from a data and privacy perspective, think of it from national security. If China has access to 100 million people's locations, they effectively can create a heat map of the United States. What that means is, like, let's say, and this is all hypothetical, so I don't want to scare anyone too much, but just like think about this, okay? Yeah. they have a heat map of like, let's say LA. They wanna create or have an attack on the U.S. and they're gonna come in at our coast somewhere. LA is the target. They now have a heat map of where people are at what hours of the day. They know their patterns. They know at 8 a.m. this road is free, but at 6 p.m. this road is free. You know, if they wanted to come in and hack our electrical grid or any other infrastructure, shut it down, we go back to 1990. Right? If we don't have our computers, we don't have things up and running, we're blind. And then now, because they have that heat map, they know where the inroads are. They know where the outroads are. We've literally mapped their invasion for them, right? And people just think, oh, well, it's a fun and games app. No, they're trying to collect data. That's the root core of all of this. And if we don't have the right to delete it, protect it, whatever it may, control it in general, that's a problem. And then the next layer of that is, even if we have the rights, it doesn't really matter unless people are literate enough and understand what that impact is. So that's where my work really comes in.
Even what powers they have against that.
Educating people, right, to help them understand, okay, once you do get these rights, here's how you need to control your data. Here's how you need to protect yourself. And that's a part of what we're doing with our software services I'm building.
I was just about to say, this leads perfectly into what your product is. Could you go into details about Beacon? Yeah,
absolutely. So Beacon stands for the Better Ethics and Consumer Outcomes Network. This is me, having been a consultant for Google, realizing the best way to make change in a business is actually to figure out how to make them more money. Right? So many people love this like human rights argument. They stand up, they pick it, they have their signs, they scream real loud, and guess what? No one cares. Like, with all due respect to the advocacy work and the sentimental value of what's going on, these businesses don't care. They're making billions of dollars. They're doing nothing illegal at this point in history. And so that's what we do. We figure out, we take these ethical dilemmas, we figure out how to make them a consumer outcome, because then that's a business problem. And then we try to generate better business and revenue models. So we can come in and say, hey, do this instead, and you guys will both make money and improve your customer experience. Right? That's how you change things. At least in the United States. You know, we're very capitalism driven.
Yes.
We're very business first, industry first. And so that's what we do. Beacon, though, is more of like the movement. It's more of like, that's how the grassroots advocacy work started. I've done this for 4.5, going on 5 years now. And that was the organization that we started with. But since then, we just leverage it more as like the brand that people recognize now. And we're actually building a software product called Pulse Policy. The point of Pulse Policy is to help companies understand their impact and create better business models in an automated way. Because originally, it was a services model that we were working on. It was like, we'll go in, we'll help consult with a company, we'll tell them, and we said, you know what, we can do this automatic. You know, not all of it, but we can come in and create a service. So what we do, you come in and you'll run through a data privacy impact assessment. We have 2 levels of pricing, where one is pretty manual for a small company that just wants to do this and learn more. And then we have one that's automated for larger enterprises who can afford it and have big messes of data inventory and need it automatically cleaned up and worked with. So we run them through a data privacy impact assessment. Once we get the output of that, then we run it through 3 proprietary databases we have. One is a database that has full objective measures of all the laws around the world. So we know what thresholds, legal thresholds at which the law complies, what rights have to be given, how long you had to respond to subject access requests, all these different things that are encoded in law, we've reverse engineered into our database.
Wow.
We have another database where we are proactively auditing third parties. So, like MailChimp or Gmail, all these companies, they have public-facing policies. We go in and audit what we can through their public-facing policies and document all that. And then a third one where we're creating a full data taxonomy. We're trying to list all the data points that companies are collecting, categorize them, check whether they are, HIPAA compliance needs, COPA, that's child and healthcare stuff. All these different compliance needs for that. And so what we do is we take your data privacy impact assessment, we run it against all those databases to check and make sure you're safe and identify holes, and then we output a dashboard for you as a company that shows you where your holes are, provides you what we're calling an impact guidance engine. So In a simple example, if we see you're using Gmail, oh, well, did you know there's this other service called Protein Mail that you can plug in instead and will protect people? Because a lot of businesses don't have the time or the money to go search this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So we're creating an automated system that can audit you, tell you how to move forward. We are not your lawyers, but we are technical people who have read the law over and over again, know the law, and have lawyers advising us and helping us construct the system to where you will be compliant. You will be above and beyond compliance. We're actually trying to figure out what we're going to call it, but we're looking at like names like optimal compliance rather than like currently a lot of companies are trying to do what we call minimum viable compliance. So how do we just skirt the law? We're going to go above and beyond. You will never have to worry about compliance. And beyond that, we'll teach you and how to move your business forward, how to always stay ahead, what products to use, how to move into them, things like that. And that's the real value we add. But the ancillary parts of that and the consumer value is that because we've done these audits, we know what data you're collecting, where it's going. We can generate your policies for you as well, your terms, your privacy, all those documents. And they update in real time because we are connected to your ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So your policies are always up to date. Consumers can understand those policies better because we've taken our UX background, user experience background, and designed them to be more comprehensible, made sure people have controls easier, all those things. So a company comes in and the short form of what we do, we automate your data protection office in 10 minutes or less for as low as $29 a month. Mm-hmm. That's our goal.
That's a really, you definitely work towards that clean pitch right there.
Yeah, that was it. So it just popped out of my mouth.
So kind of, we've been talking about the large scale of this, and where does everything that we've discussed kind of impact and come to a culmination of this area? We're talking about Rural Reboot here. We're talking about going into an area that may have been very digitally illiterate for a number of years. Yeah. But the surge of technology is coming in, and it is a necessary part. Yep. So many businesses now require a Facebook page, require that to interact with the people locally. Yeah. Where does this all come into fruition as you come and involve yourself and get involved with the efforts that are coming into this community? Like, what are some of the things that you've been noticing?
Yeah. Well, so here and there's definitely going to be businesses that need our software, but that's not the biggest reason. That's more of a, I need to find larger businesses, probably in cities and things like that, who are going to use our software. For me and for Beacon, the biggest reason I'm involved out here is because, one, like I said, workforce development. Mm-hmm. We can train kids how to get good jobs and make it so they can stay in their hometowns if they want to. Yeah. Have good paying jobs, healthy wages, security in their life, stability for themselves and their family. For two, trying to increase that digital literacy in general. Even if they don't get a job in the field, they know how to protect themselves. Exactly. They know how to evaluate a technology, things like that. It's much more fundamental work for me out here. It's, slow down, teach people. It's more of an educational role than it is like a for-profit initiative role that I'm stepping into out here. And so from that perspective, it's much more of an impact thing for me. I'm not out here to make money. I'm, no desire to go and try to sell my business to everybody out here. Partly because they don't have the need, and partly just like I want to improve the world by increasing digital literacy. That's like the biggest thing I would love to do in life, but I also have to figure out how to pay the bills, and that doesn't do it. So I have my own company and do that stuff to pay the bills. But my passion and the thing that keeps me going and the root of Beacon is to improve human-computer experiences or computer-human experiences over time and make our relationship with our technology healthier.
Exactly. And I think it's a huge part too, because I think something that's very indicative of this area in particular, there has been so many levels of economic collapse, or there hasn't been that level of economic prosperity as there have been in either of the coasts. Yeah. Like we usually get hit in Colorado's in the middle of the country, so you get hit by it goes across and then it comes back, so you get hit double time there. So what is so special about this area that you really feel brought to help out?
Yeah, great question. part of it is that, I've been in Colorado. I came out here for a grad program.
Mm-hmm.
I've been out here for almost a decade off and on. Lived here full time for 3 years and then just always kind of came around. Part of it is I saw how Denver Boulder grew. I watched that. I've seen how the Springs is growing.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of towns around Colorado grow fast. I think Canyon City, Florence, this kind of area is the next to take off. It's quite literally the only town on the Front Range that hasn't really developed a whole lot and is primed to. But the real root of it is because Brad actually brought me out here to speak a few years ago. That's how I got involved out here.
Yeah, same here, actually. That same event.
Yeah, and I wasn't, at the time, I was traveling all around the globe speaking about my work. And like I said, being from Nebraska, I've been to small towns. I wasn't scared of it, but I was a little bit like, what value am I going to add out here, really? Because that's, as a speaker, that's always what you're thinking of is like, okay, yes, time and everything, but like it's worth the time if you're going to add value. And I wasn't sure, but I decided to come down early that day. I came down 3 or 4 hours early to meet everybody, to listen to some of the other talks, and really see what's going on down here. And there was enough that I saw that it kept me interested because partly, like I said earlier, I always wanted to help back home, but Nebraska is way slow. It's so slow. It's good life. That's what our state slogan is, the good life. You go there for stability. You go there for a healthy family, for good education, to have a good life. It's not spectacular. It's not super exciting. It's a good life.
Yeah, it's the baseline.
And so things don't change as much. It's like, let's keep it stable because that's what we're all here for. And while I appreciate that, I also want to help make change out there. So a big thing for me with Canyon, when I came down and saw that, I was like, this is an opportunity for me to help this area prove that this works. And then take that model and take it back home and say, hey, it worked in this town of, there's 20, 30,000 people out here, I think, something like that.
The county has a population of about 43,000 total.
Yeah, the county itself is a little larger.
So Canyon's about 19, and I think Florence is around 5 to 6.
Yeah, so this area is, 20, 30,000, something like that. And it's enough to say, it worked out here. Here's the results of it. This many more people are getting jobs. Their salaries, increased from X to Y. And here's how we did it. And then take it home and say, now let's do it here. Impact, increasing literacy, things like that. It is a slow process. I believe it will be lifelong work for me. And so, the big reason I came out here is because Brad called me and said, let's have you come down and talk.
Yeah.
There was enough interesting things down here that I kept coming back. And now it's growing enough to where I do feel very confident in the next few years, we will have a validated model here that can be used to scale across the United States and re-strengthen our rural communities, get them back engaged in our democracy, participating in our economy, because right now, a lot of the economic practices in these rural areas, and not just Canyon, I'm just here, but most rural areas is behind times. People don't or haven't had access to internet for the longest time. Yeah. It's not that they are dumb, it's that it's new and somebody has to help them figure it out, So the thing I always say to people is like, look, these areas, very stable, that's why people move here, it's comfortable, it's good life. If you ask someone here how to use a computer or how to fix a computer, they'd have to call a professional. But, to my city friends I talk to, I'm like, look, if I asked you how to change a tire or how to, fix a door handle, you probably call a professional. It's just a different way of life. It's a different knowledge base. And that's great. And it's created a lot of good lives for a lot of people. But we now need to change things a bit. We need to speed up a little bit and onboard these communities, especially if we want to keep the kids who grew up here staying here.
Sustainable and positive growth needs to be nurtured. Yeah. And there in the beginning. Otherwise, because like you said, this is one of the few areas in Colorado that has really slowed down or has taken its time in being seen by people, and it has begun to grow. Yeah. Colorado Springs is now growing at a rate that's higher than Denver is growing. Yeah. And that's huge. And we're about 35 to 40 minutes from Colorado Springs. We are going to be the next location where that big boom is going to be. And if we don't have the infrastructure or the literacy put in place for all of this growth, it's going to be a really rough time.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So, but we'll get through it. I have confidence. There's a lot of good people helping out right now.
That's the whole thing with rural is the weather the storms. There hasn't been this huge. I mean, with the foundation of Canyon and Florence, there was a huge boom, and then there was an economic collapse, and then there was everything kind of steadied for quite some time, and then there was a boom. With the move from work from home and everything like that, people started looking at, maybe I don't want to get stuck in the studio apartment that I'm paying $2,000 a month for when I could buy a house in this other area for less than that.
Right.
So there's definitely a shift coming.
Yes, I agree.
One final thought before we end this episode. What are some of the things that you're looking at, both personally and in your business, that you're looking at a big impact coming? Kind of looking into the future a little bit.
Wow. There's a lot we could really talk about. I think I'll try to pick like one topic here, and from our business perspective, I do believe this is going to grow. That's why I'm doing it, obviously. But if we do our job right, I believe we will dramatically change the way that our society engages with and has a relationship with technology. By creating an auditing process, we then lend the industry to more transparency. Now, there's always layers of like, well, who's the auditor's auditor? And all that, I get it. There's always going to be that problem. But we need to take steps forward, and I think the combination of increasing that transparency will also increase the ability for people to comprehend what's going on. And I think we're going to do this back and forth dance for the next couple decades where we're going to chip away at the foundations of the black box that is Silicon Valley. And in doing so, we're also going to educate people. Once people get more educated, they're going to demand more. We're going to chip away more. It's just going to keep going back and forth over time until we do have a literate society that has commanded their rights and gotten those rights and is also literate enough to protect themselves and make change. I think we are going to look at data the same way our grandparents looked at money during the Great Depression. After that happened, they all said, well, I don't want to trust the banks. I'm going to put money in my bed.
Yeah.
I think we're going to hit a point where people are now realizing, wow, this whole data thing, this isn't safe. I can't really trust these companies right now. And until things change, I'm going to protect my data by probably, for now, just not even putting it on the internet.
Yeah.
And I think over time, it's going to be a thing where, like, I know for me, for sure, obviously I'm in the work, but I think a whole generation of like 20 to 40-year-olds here are going to start having kids. They're going to have gone through this for the last 15, 20 years. They're going to say, I'm going to raise my kids to know better. And we are, over time, going to see a generational shift towards a better internet, a better relationship with the internet, and a healthier democracy because of that.
I mean, we're already seeing it a little bit with millennial and Gen Z are starting to move towards, I'm not going to give my 4-year-old an iPad so they just stay busy the entire time.
Yeah.
Because that
digital pacifier.
Exactly. And it becomes, this is my interaction with the world versus having this discussion.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's going to be a very interesting time for the next few decades.
Yeah, it is. And that's, I think it's just a natural flow of life. New things happen. We learn through, lack of better words, we learn through experimentation, right? Cigarettes was a big thing for a long time. People loved them. People let their kids smoke them. People smoked with other people in the same room. Like, I think we're going to hit a point where like, oh my God, you used to like put a digital like Wi-Fi connection next to a pregnant lady. Oh my God! Like you let that kid be on the internet. Oh my God! Like, we need to have same things almost that you had with tobacco. I think is going to start to pop up around digital literacy. We don't want the radioactive Wi-Fi waves going through our pockets and like real thing. Causing cancer. A lot of men are getting more testicular cancer because we have a phone in our pocket that's radiating all the time. Like it's just the truth. We're getting that way, and I think we will learn. And it's a lot of little things that need to happen, but looking at the arch of history, we always adapt, we always improve, and it's going to take time. I don't know if it's going to be 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, but I think it'll happen.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. It was a great discussion going all over the maps of technology, data privacy, your company. All of the information will be in the description of this episode, so definitely go check out Joe's work and all of the other stuff that you've been going. So.
Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me, and I look forward to helping out. Last note for anybody listening, like you want to reach out to me, Sage is going to put all the links, but always interested to meet new people, hear how I can help. I may not always be the most available, but I might have some tips on where you can go otherwise, and how to speed things up, protect your kids, protect your family, protect yourself, and have a better, stronger relationship with the internet. So,
exactly.
Thank you.